One Piece, episode 1154. Out at sea as two ships sailed away from Egghead, the Marines surrounding the island still weren't responding to HQ. Joy Boy's ancient conqueror's hockey had wiped them all out. Even Vice Admiral Pomsky was unconscious. Snake desperately called for the Marines to wake up since Luffy's crew was escaping, but honestly, her panic likely had more to do with her crush on Luffy than any Marine duty. Vice Admiral Dahl was out cold too, and Bonnie's age effect remained active on her, which was impressive given how hockey usually overrides transformations. A giant scanned the battlefield through binoculars. Every Marine was down. Brogy was amazed. Dory suspected the Iron Giant's hockey might even surpass Shanks's. The only reason it didn't affect the Giants was because it wasn't aimed at them, and because Oda didn't show Kizaru, he avoided making him look like Green Bull did when Shanks walked in. Luffy exhaled in relief and shouted his thanks to Emeth. The charred guardian of Joy Boy didn't respond, but Luffy still gave him a trademark grin. And we shouldn't forget, Saturn is standing right there beside him. I'm honestly surprised Luffy accepted someone sacrificing themselves for him so casually, but maybe he hasn't processed it yet. Seeing the perfect chance, Dory and Brogy rallied their crew. Everyone exploded in celebration. It was finally time to sail for Elbaf, the land of giants. Bonnie hugged her father. Zoro finally released a long-held breath. Usopp nearly fainted in joy at seeing his giant mentors again. Luffy rested in his old man form on Nami's lap. And instead of Sanji complaining about that, he approached Vegapunk, asking for clarity about something the doctor had said earlier. Sanji admitted he didn't understand everything, but he was sure Stella made some seriously wild statements. That's when we cut back, 2 weeks earlier. Shaka detected unusual spikes in the energy readings coming from the power station. That prompted the team to monitor the system for any further abnormalities. Shaka explained that the Seraphim are designed to draw more energy as they mature, but if that rate had been miscalculated, they could be facing a serious crisis. Under normal circumstances, the Seraphim should develop gradually over time, but now their growth looked dangerously accelerated, as if they could reach adulthood far earlier than expected. Pythagoras quickly noticed the data no longer matched their earlier benchmarks. Edison pointed out that the reaction rate itself was climbing, even though the power station appeared stable. Chaka surveyed the group, pointing out that every metric had been tampered with at a fundamental level, and the only way that was possible was if someone had deliberately altered the Mother Flame. The data logs had been edited so precisely that only another Vegapunk could have done it. Edison immediately suspected Lilith, the embodiment of Vegapunk's darker impulses. For the moment, Shaka could confirm that the three of them were the only individuals with airtight alibis, and the amount of missing energy wasn't small. Edison argued that they needed to keep an eye on the others, with Lilith being their prime target. He also insisted they switch their neural links to offline mode so their memories wouldn't sync to Punk records. And it became clear Stella was already convinced Lilith was behind everything. A week later, Pythagoras showed up with shocking news. York was the one who betrayed them. Stella and Shaka were both stunned. Meanwhile, York himself was napping without a care in the world. Shaka realized all of York's shared memories in Punk records had been falsified. He also confirmed the Denden Mushi at the crime site had been tampered with. Stella struggled to understand York's motives. He apologized to Lilith for the suspicion, and Shaka added that someone had released the weaponized sea beasts without authorization. A white signal jammer had been found, further complicating things. Hearing this, Stella retraced the call patterns from their long-distance snail, and the truth became undeniable. They heard York reporting their activities regarding the Void Sentry. No wonder CP agents kept dropping in. Then, just a day later, news broke about the destruction of the Lulusia Kingdom. They still lacked context, but Stella couldn't shake the feeling that everything was connected. He instructed Pythagoras to monitor the ocean around Egghead for sea level shifts or unusual transmissions. Shaka asked if Stella believed this was tied to the Mother Flame. The old scientist was sure of it. He believed a fragment of the Mother Flame had been retrieved by one of the rogue sea beasts and delivered straight to the world government. And even without proof, Stella feared they had used it to activate an ancient weapon. The idea alone made him shudder. He blamed himself for creating York, born from his own ambitions and greed. The others wondered whether capturing York would even help, but Stella knew it was already too late. Their intentions didn't matter. They would be erased for pursuing information about the Void Sentry either way. Instead, they needed to use York's trust to learn the government's objective and counter it. Shaka urged Stella to run while they still had time. Stella refused. For the Vegapunks, escape was impossible. The world government would send orders to every branch. They'd be hunted until the end, and their deaths would amount to nothing. But Egghead had something O'Hara never possessed, a way to amplify their knowledge and broadcast it globally. Vegapunk, known as the smartest man alive, wondered aloud what the government really was. The closer he approached the truth, the more elusive it seemed, and if death was unavoidable, he vowed to make the world government pay a steep price for it. He apologized to Shaka and Pythagoras for dragging them into this, but they reminded him that they are Vegapunk, as much as he is. The Vegapunks of logic and morality wanted the same thing, though it made them question what death even meant for them. Were Shaka and Pythagoras truly gone? Or were they simply different manifestations of Vegapunk's fragmented mind? But there was still one more thing they had to protect, something even more important than themselves. The Cloud Loft system, Vegapunk's method for generating artificial island clouds, was their final insurance against the rising oceans. If sea levels kept creeping upward, this invention could literally determine humanity's survival. Later on, York spotted Stella wandering around the scrapyard and casually asked what he was doing there. Stella brushed it off as nothing important, perched on Emmett's shoulder while giving her a polite greeting. That simple moment stuck in York's memory and became the clue she'd eventually pass on to the five elders, revealing the hidden location of the transponder snail. York cheerfully noted that if the Mother Flame experiments let them activate the Iron Giant again, it would change the scientific world forever. Stella laughed along on the surface, but inside, he prayed that such a discovery would never reach completion. Some breakthroughs were too dangerous for anyone to use. 2 days before everything fell apart on Egghead, Stella secretly recorded the message he intended to send to the world. Once again, his humility was on full display. He wasn't chasing glory. He simply believed that the truth belonged to everyone. No one would ever think to search inside the Iron Giant for the hidden snail, so upon his death the broadcast would ignite automatically. But recording the message wasn't enough. They also had to make sure that no one, even themselves, accidentally revealed anything. To protect the plan, they agreed to wipe their own memories of York's betrayal. That's a level of technology the world government would drool over if they knew it existed. By erasing everything related to the treachery, they ensured they would relive the panic and confusion naturally, but this time with a failsafe in place. For once, victory would be theirs from the start. Soon after, their minds went blank. Stella discovered the note he had left behind for himself. 2 whole weeks of memories had been deleted willingly. He even joked about wanting to surprise himself, which somehow made the situation even more surreal. The phrase, "Void Fortnight," popped up there as well. Yes, that's actually why the chapter carries that name. They were stunned to learn from the note that the world government already knew about their Void Century research, and preparations for their elimination were underway. Stella was shaken that he had effectively instructed his future self to accept death. Things only intensified when news hit that Bonnie and Kuma's crew had reached the island, CP-0 was closing in, and a full naval encirclement followed right behind them, complete with Admiral Kizaru and Saint Saturn, the god of science. As they sped out to rescue Bonnie, Stella told Sanji and the others that once she was safe, they didn't have to bother trying to save him. Sanji was baffled. How could the old man talk like that? Stella admitted he didn't want to die, but believed that sacrificing himself would set a crucial chain of events into motion. Yet Sanji refused to let him throw his life away so easily. Before they reached their destination, Stella revealed one more thing: his thoughts about the One Piece. He wanted the Straw Hats, specifically Luffy's crew, to be the ones who finally discover it. The world's smartest man had chosen his bets for the final race. We then cut to Luffy and Usopp celebrating with the giants. Luffy wished he could join in properly after recovering a bit more, but joy is joy. At long last, the crew is heading toward the land of Usopp's dreams, Elbaf. Morgans was desperate to reclaim his throne as the greatest news authority on the planet. With chaos spreading across the world, he saw nothing but opportunity. Every headline had to feel hopeless, every report soaked in despair. Fear sold papers, and desperation sold even more. His staff was instructed to squeeze every drop of panic they could from the situation. Vivi was revolted by his mindset. She pushed back, insisting that even in his final moments, Dr. Vegapunk never lost hope. Morgan scoffed at her attitude. He snapped back with a threat, warning that if the princess didn't know her place, he could easily expose her identity to the world. Vivi didn't hesitate. She fired back, calling him a fraud and declaring that no sane person would ever trust his lies. The workers nearby seemed entertained by the exchange, but Wapol was visibly sweating. Forcing a wide grin, he quickly reminded Vivi that Morgans was the sole reason they were still alive. To Morgans, this entire situation was exhilarating. Even the truth, when twisted properly, could be irresistible. He laughed openly at the idea of the world sinking beneath the seas. After all, he ruled the skies. To him, the coming era looked thrilling. With a sharp, knowing smile, he warned Vivi that she might regret challenging him. But Vivi refused to yield. If the world was doomed regardless, she had no intention of groveling just to survive. Morgans was furious, yet he redirected his attention to the stories waiting to be printed. Wapol pleaded with Vivi not to destroy the last thing keeping them safe, the news itself. The headlines were already decided: Blackbeard clashing with Law, Shanks obliterating Kid, and a final outrageous claim that Luffy had coldly taken Dr. Vegapunk's life. Vivi immediately objected to that narrative. Still, if Vegapunk's death needed a scapegoat, it certainly wouldn't be the Marines. With 3 of the 4 emperors making massive moves, it felt inevitable that even Buggy would soon stumble into a victory of his own. Meanwhile, the Marine forces encircling Egghead Island had gone completely silent. Not even Fleet Admiral Akainu could get a response. A creeping fear took hold. Had they all been wiped out? Sentomaru was seen drifting away in a small boat with only minimal supplies. The massive man couldn't hold back his tears. Whatever power Joy Boy unleashed hadn't affected him. Perhaps it only targeted those who harbored malice toward Luffy. Kizaru watched Sentomaru disappear into the distance as Akainu demanded answers. Stepping over rows of unconscious Marines, Kizaru finally reached a transponder snail. He casually pointed out how loud the Fleet Admiral was being. Akainu hadn't expected Kizaru to be the one answering. He demanded to know what had happened to everyone. Kizaru explained plainly, every Marine was knocked out, foam at their mouths, clear victims of overwhelming Conqueror's haki. Akainu brushed that aside and pressed him for details about Saint Saturn. Was the Elder unharmed? Had the power station fallen? Did any targets escape? Kizaru dismissed the interrogation. Matters like that were above his pay grade to report. He suggested Akainu wait until the younger Marines regained consciousness. That response earned him a sharp rebuke for slacking off. In return, Kizaru quietly asked a question of his own. Had Akainu ever been forced to kill his closest friend? The line fell silent. Akainu's thoughts drifted back to his first encounter with the world's smartest man. Vegapunk's enormous head had left an impression. The doctor hadn't begged or resisted. He simply asked how much funding he would receive. He already knew his arrest was just an excuse to exploit his genius. All he cared about was whether they were willing to invest in his research. Kizaru had found that amusing back then. Years later, he stood at the birth of Egghead Island. Even after becoming an admiral, Kizaru worked alongside everyone else building Vegapunk's dream, an island centuries ahead of its time. And now, he had helped reduce it to ashes. He had even delivered the final blow to his closest friend. Overcome with emotion, Kizaru challenged Akainu's accusation. If the Fleet Admiral had time to question him, then he was welcome to come see the aftermath himself. For someone as detached as Kizaru to break down like this, Akainu understood the mission must have been hell. He offered a rare apology for crossing the line. Kizaru merely told him to watch his tone. Back aboard the Thousand Sunny, an unnatural silence hung in the air. The crew wondered if the celebration had ended before it even began. Frankie found it strange that things stopped after just a single drink. Jinbe noticed Luffy's expression and understood. Failing to save Vegapunk weighed heavily on him. Their Egghead outfits were already gone. Frankie argued that they had gone up against 5 elders, an admiral, CP0, the Seraphim, and an entire naval blockade. Just surviving was a miracle. Jinbe agreed, but Zoro scoffed. To him, sulking like this was embarrassing, especially for an emperor of the sea. Zoro doubled down on his stance, saying that the death of an old man shouldn't be weighing on their captain this heavily. It sounded harsh, but at the same time, different perspectives within the crew weren't necessarily a bad thing. Aboard the massive giant ship, Lilith finally regained consciousness. The mood instantly lifted, especially for Sanji, who was visibly relieved to see her awake. As Lilith sat up, she adjusted the device in her ear, clearly receiving new information. That's when it hit her. Everything around her was enormous. Being on a giant's vessel made the scale difference impossible to ignore. The Straw Hats carefully broke the tragic news about the other Vegapunks and apologized for not being able to save them. Nami expected Lilith to be confused or shaken, especially after Atlas had struck her so violently. Instead, Lilith calmly absorbed the situation and revealed that she already knew what had happened. That response completely baffled Sanji. Excusing herself, Lilith stepped away to cry in private. Usopp couldn't help but question what actually made her the evil Vegapunk. At worst, she seemed obsessed with funding and had a habit of stealing. If that qualified as evil, then Nami might be in serious trouble. Almost immediately after, Lilith cheerfully announced that she was starving. She explained that the hunger came from being cut off from York. As the embodiment of greed, York used to handle eating for all of them. Thankfully, the giants had generously left behind piles of fruit. In most stories, that wouldn't mean much, but in One Piece, fruit always feels important. When Brook gestured toward the table, he sensed something unsettling about it as well. Meanwhile, Luffy was still sulking over Vegapunk's death. Chopper explained that Luffy had been blaming himself non-stop and had barely eaten, only managing 5 clusters of massive grapes, which was still an absurd amount by normal standards. Lilith acknowledged Luffy's sadness, but reminded them that she already had the full picture. Sanji didn't understand what she meant until Lilith admitted that while she truly was grieving, the situation depended on how one looked at it. Then she dropped a bombshell. All of the Vegapunks were still alive. Everyone froze in disbelief. Lilith quickly clarified. Physically, they were gone. Functionally, they no longer existed. The crew struggled to process that, briefly wondering if she meant something like ghosts, which wasn't entirely impossible given Perona, or a certain Soul King. Realizing it was too complicated, Lilith simplified it for Luffy. He had kept his promise. As long as Punk records remained intact, the Vegapunk satellites lived on, their memories, thoughts, and data were all preserved in the cloud. That revelation explained why Oda had treated Vegapunk's death so differently compared to other near-deaths in the series. The effect on Luffy was instant. He sprang onto the table and shouted to the giants, his energy completely restored. They could all tell his mood had shifted. Luffy thanked them sincerely for their help, and with his spirits lifted, the decision was made. This was cause for a feast. Usopp called down to Zoro as the giant chef below revealed he had been waiting for this exact moment. With Luffy sulking earlier, he'd had plenty of time to prepare. He encouraged everyone to eat as much as they wanted. Once the sun god's hunger was satisfied, Robin wrapped her arms around her favorite crewmate like a plush toy. With Elbaf ahead, she might finally see Saul again. Chopper shared her happiness, though something about it made the future feel less straightforward than it sounded. The giants raised a toast and called on Luffy. They recalled Vegapunk's words, that whoever claims the One Piece will shake the entire world. Curious, they asked who Straw Hat believed would find it. That was all Luffy needed. It didn't matter who stood with him or against him. No matter what, Luffy declared that he would become the king of the pirates. The crew and giants alike celebrated, not just their survival, but the ultimate victory waiting ahead. Their course was set northeast. They now sailed toward the legendary land of giants, Elbaf. As the scene fades, a shadowy figure with a drink in hand seems to welcome their arrival. Oda has been introducing an incredible number of silhouettes lately, but at the very least, one thing feels certain. Luffy is about to grow even stronger in Elbaf.